Hi, welcome to The Inner Way. I'm your host, Father David Smith. We've been studying very carefully and very slowly the great spiritual classic, Unseen Warfare, and it's in every single video like you see it before me right now because YouTube always wants me to reference the publications I use, which makes sense. We looked 2 weeks ago, I believe, 2 or 3 weeks ago, at chapter 29. Chapter 29, then at the end of it, had a list of 5 states of people who are being attacked by the devil, and the devil trying to keep them away from doing the right thing. Then each of the chapters after that talk about one of those 5 states. And today we're coming to chapter 34, which is the 5th of the 5 states. So the first one was people who really don't have any concern for the spiritual life at all, and the devil really doesn't need to attack them. And then it gets progressively better and better and better. And then this week we're coming to those who are really excelling in the spiritual life. In fact, the state, I'm reading from chapter 29 now, is simply says, "Yet others turn the very virtue they possess into a cause and occasion of harm for themselves." And that's very similar to the title of chapter 34, How the Enemy Turns the Virtues Themselves Against Those Who Practice Them. So this is going to be an interesting chapter because we're talking about people who are doing good things, who are trying to grow in their faith, trying to live in union with God, as we said way back in the first few videos studying Unseen Warfare. They're really trying to do that, and yet somehow the devil finds a way of turning what they do around so that it actually becomes a sin, it becomes evil, it becomes a problem to them that draws them away from God. So I'll start reading right at the beginning of the chapter. I'm going to read quite a bit today from the actual chapter. The reason is it's very long, and it's also a very interesting chapter. I'll tell you why in a moment. "But let us suppose that you faithfully and steadfastly follow the path of virtue, turning neither to right or to left. Do not imagine that the enemy will leave you alone. No. In the extract I quoted from St. John of the Ladder, that was last week, you have already heard that when the enemy sees that all his attempts to lead you into evil have failed, he follows you stealthily and flatters you, suggesting that your life is wholly pleasing to God. This is his last temptation." Okay, so what we're going to hear is that the closer we grow to God, the more we grow in our spiritual life, that the thing that's going to trip us up is that feeling like we have accomplished something wonderful, that we're doing pretty good, that we are a real asset to the kingdom of God. This is pride. In other words, that's the one thing that the devil will always have, and always, I shouldn't say always, but sometimes works on those who have grown in their faith, have grown close to God. Now, this is really a remarkable chapter because it mainly consists of ways that we can speak to our mind. So our mind begins to tell us that we're doing really well, that we are really good people, that we're being successful in the spiritual life and so on. And we need to address that and to talk to our own minds and help ourselves to remember that we are totally reliant on God for anything good. So the whole chapter is, not the whole chapter, but most of it is the ways that we talk to our mind. This is the first way. So let us begin. He's saying this to his mind. Okay, mind, you think you're so wonderful? Let's have a conversation. So let us begin. Let us glance at the time before we existed. What were we then? Nothing, and we could do nothing for which the source of all life could reward us by granting us existence. So this is the first thing we say to the mind. We wouldn't even exist if it weren't for God. God has placed us in this world according to His will, not because we did anything wonderful. The very fact that you're alive at all is completely the work of God. Then number 2, direct knowledge of God is a gift of God. Conscience is a gift of God. Thirst for heavenly life is a gift of God. These 3 constitute the spirit of our life, urging us heavenwards. You, my mind, are not mine. You were given me by God. So now we move from the fact of our existence to the fact that we have rational faculties, that we can figure things out, that we can read, that we can understand that there is a God. This in itself is given also to us by God. This is nothing that we decided to do. We don't go through our life and say, I myself have discovered God in everything and I'm going to pursue Him according to what I know. No, not at all. Christianity is not a philosophy. That's what we do with a philosophy. It's not a philosophy. It's a revealed faith. And it is revealed to us by God. God reveals Himself to us. We take notice and move toward Him, and He reveals more of Himself to us. It is not our doing at all. Number 3. Air, fire, water, the earth with all its treasures, the elements, stones, metals, plants, and animals, which provide all we need as food, garments, and houses, are not made by us, but are given. All the concepts we need about our surroundings, the forms of our daily life, of society and government, the arts and crafts, the rules of action in all these domains, we find ready-made and need only to assimilate them instead of bothering our heads to invent them. Each man coming into the world inherits them from his ancestors. So now we're taking a step further. Beyond my body and my mind, there's also my environment. All the things that are around me, the government, the roads, the building, the organizations, and so on. I can, in my life, assist them to continue them, to make them better, to defend them, and so on. But I did not invent them. Sometimes I think back when I'm reading about something from history. I was reading about a 6th century saint the other day, and I thought to myself, wow, what was it like to live in the 6th century when might made right in this world. And it wasn't settled that there would always be food, that there would always be peace, even that there would always be water. And yet here I live in a place where it is an automatic expectation that when I switch the light switch, there's going to be electricity. Every once in a while there's not, but it's almost a little vacation from electricity that takes place. It's not like it's off for hours and hours and days and so on and so forth. We have so many things that we have inherited from the generations before us. Again, that's not our doing. That is a gift, and indeed a gift from God. To go on, number 4. Each man, when born, brings this seed with him and in him. Later, the development of this seed is determined by the kind of people who surround him. What an indescribable great blessing it is to be born among people who lead a truly spiritual life. So at the beginning it talks about a seed, about the seed of faith, and it's in you and it grows and so on. But it doesn't grow simply because you've figured everything out on your own or I've figured everything out on our own. We have things like unseen warfare or the scriptures, these ancient texts that have traveled through centuries, literally centuries, and all sorts of languages and translations to come to us today. And we read them and we find that our soul resonates with them. The same things that we feel, these people were feeling and took the time to write down for us to learn from. There are also people in our lives, all over our lives, that offer us example and advice and help and pray for us in our spiritual journey. Did we choose to have all of that? Did we make that happen? No. Again, no and no and no. These are indeed the gifts of God. To go on. Let us remember that we can boast only of something which is a direct result of our own will and is done by us independently of anything else. But look how our actions proceed. How do they begin? Certain circumstances come together and lead us to one action or another, or a thought comes to our mind to do something, and we do it. But the concurrence of circumstances does not come from us, nor, obviously, is the thought to do something our own. Someone suggests it. I heard a joke one time about a group of scientists arguing with God that they had figured out everything in the world and that God was no longer needed. And so God said, well, can you create a human being out of clay, out of dirt? And the scientists said, yes, we believe we can. So they went and they got a wheelbarrow and they put a bunch of dirt in the wheelbarrow, and God said, no. You create your own dirt. This is the way it is. When we keep going back and back, we may congratulate ourselves for one thing, but the thing before it, we congratulate ourselves less about, and it keeps going back until we come to a place where we didn't have anything to do with anything. Even the seed of a thought of making my life better, of growing closer to God, those seeds of thoughts come from outside us. To go on. The eyes of the people around us exert a great pressure on our designs. These witnesses force us not to give expression to the evil which arises in the heart. We refrain from evil, and our behavior appears correct. Were it not for them, our behavior would look quite different, and it often becomes such as long as we are sure that no other eye can see us. It happens with some people that as soon as their outer conditions change and they can live more freely, all that was previously concealed for fear of being seen by others bursts out, and a formerly well-behaved man becomes a drunkard, a debauchee, or even a robber. So this is another element of our society, of living in the culture we live in. It is required of us when we are around other people to behave in a certain way. And there are things that we can do that we may not even think are necessarily wrong, but they're not done in public. Of course, nowadays, nowadays it seems like almost anything is advisable or is at least permissible. I was in the grocery store the other day, and there was a young woman from my parish there, and she greeted me. She's a regular part of the parish, and we know each other, so on. So she greeted me, but she was wearing a T-shirt that was very profane. And I noticed that as we were talking, she was trying to cover it up. And I thought to myself, okay, it's nice that if the priest is standing there, you're covering up something like that. But you know what? You shouldn't be wearing it at all, especially to a grocery store. Don't wear it at all. Don't have it at all. But this is the society that we live in, where as they say, without God, everything is permissible. And to some degree, we've lost what this is saying. But to you and me, brothers and sisters, to us, it is good to be around people and to be close to people who have an expectation of us and how we act and what we wear and so on and so forth. That is a help to us. We see in the news a lot of times people who are doing really terrible and evil things when they don't think anyone is watching. Well, that's going to become less and less the case as we go on through our history, because little cameras like the one I'm talking into right now that can fit in your pocket are everywhere. And the things that people think they're doing in secret are not being done in secret. But you know what? They never were being done in secret, because the eyes of God are everywhere, keeping watch over the wicked and the good, as the scriptures tell us. Well, I've gone a little long, so I'm just going to read the conclusion of chapter 34. This is a remarkable chapter, and I hope you get a chance to read it and to integrate some of the advice that unseen warfare has. This is how it finishes. To conclude, if, following all the indications set out above, you begin to make a frequent survey of your life, then, when the enemy begins to blow your trumpet into your ears, saying how good you are, this trumpeting will not find response within you by engendering self-esteem or self-approval, but, on the contrary, will be repulsed on every occasion by the most humble and disparaging thoughts and feelings about yourself. Well, next week we're going on to chapter 35 as we continue our leisurely survey of unseen warfare. What a great thing this has been to benefit from this wonderful book. I hope that you'll join us next week, and until then, God bless you. And I'll see you in church.